Okay, so where did this 2009 H1N1 influenza virus come from? Well, actually, back in 1990, if you looked at it, the influenza virus has 8 different segments within this cell. That's what those squiggly lines are in the middle of the circle, the virus itself. So it is an 8-segmented RNA structure. And when you start looking at the segments of that RNA, what you're going to find is that you're finding the classic swine H1N1 virus, which is found in the United States, in North America, a human H3N2 virus from North America, an avian virus, and you're seeing a Eurasian swine virus. And when they started to look at where all of these parts are coming from, they could actually trace it back, all those different, gene segments, back to about 1990. And so this virus, even though it only showed up in 2009, this virus actually dates back to, or portions of it, date back to 1990. So if you get sick, what is the infectious period? And how is this going to affect work in general? The virus can actually incubate for up to 2 days, and you're going to be asymptomatic, which means that you are not showing any types of symptoms. Once you start getting sick, give or take around by day 3, the one thing I want you to remember, even though you start getting sick, when do you actually stay home from work? You don't usually, generally speaking, people don't stay home from work when they start to feel crappy or sick. They wait until they really, really, really do feel bad. And that's when they start going home. But by then, you could be on, day 4.5. Because it takes a while for, you to start to feel crappy because the influenza virus itself, it has to start, spreading within your body. And as you get more infected, that's when you actually become feeling more sick. So you still are at work until, give or take about day 4, 4.5, day 4, whatever. But you're still shedding virus, and you've been shedding virus all the way up until, day 1.5. So anybody that you've come in contact with, could have the potential of becoming sick. So you go through you're symptomatic with influenza for give or take about 7 days, and then you go into the recovery mode. And currently for 2009 H1N1, for the general public, they're saying that 24 hours after you've taken your last fever-reducing medicine, you could go back to work. For healthcare workers, it is, if you have direct patient contact, they're saying, by they, I mean CDC, is saying for you guys to stay home for at least 7 days. But at that point, you're still shedding virus if you're a member of the general public. Because if you notice, your titer may not be high about the virus itself, but you still have the ability to start to shed virus and could, in fact, infect additional people. One thing that everybody who had built the plan was planning for was, worst case scenario. And in this case, the worst case scenario would be a Category 5, or what they were planning for what happened in 1918. Not every pandemic is the same. The pandemic that we had in 1918 was a Category 5. The pandemic that we had in 1957 and 1968, those were Category 2 or Category 3. What they're saying for 2009 H1N1, they're saying that it's probably going to be about a Category 1, maybe a Category 2. So each pandemic is different. They're not all the same. The federal government, specifically CDC and Health and Human Services, actually developed the Pandemic Severity Index. That's the arrow that you're seeing in the on the left-hand side. This arrow, the Pandemic Severity Index, shows you, and it is assuming a 30% illness rate. And by unmitigated pandemic, that means you haven't done any type of social distancing measures. This is, just, worst case scenario. And so it goes from a Category 1 to a Category 5. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that in 1918, that virus that caused the 1918 pandemic was H1N1 as well. It was a different strain of H1N1, but it was still H1N1. 1957, it was H2N2. 1968, it was H3N2. And what we're seeing right now in 2009 for this particular one, it's H1N1 as well. Okay, let's talk about the vaccine. A lot of people are under the impression that if you get the vaccine, you are being exposed to the virus itself. The vaccine itself is actually a killed virus. You cannot get the influenza from the vaccine itself. Now, if you are already sick with influenza, when you get the vaccine, you will develop influenza. Your body has not been able to produce antibodies for that particular vaccine, it hasn't had enough time. So if you're already sick with influenza, and as you know, you're asymptomatic for up to 2 days. So even though you get the vaccine but you don't feel bad, doesn't mean that you don't have influenza. Okay? When they create the vaccine every year, what happens is the WHO looks at the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere separately. They have 122 reference labs that they use across the world. They pull in the data from there, and they decide what are the common influenzas that they're seeing, and they decide what strains to put in the vaccine for that current year. And again, they make a separate one for the Northern Hemisphere, and they make a separate vaccine recommendation for the Southern Hemisphere. Okay? So every single year, they choose 2 type A's and 1 type B. And they always choose for the vaccine an H1N1-like virus, and they choose an H3N2-like virus. And then they always choose a B. What do they think is going to be the B that's going to be the problem for that year? When you see this string of it where it says A Brisbane 59 2007, the A is the type of influenza that you have, so that's a type A influenza. Brisbane, that is the location of where that particular virus was found. The 59, what the 59 is, it's actually assigned by the lab that typed that out. And that when they type it, when the labs type it out, it's an arbitrary number that they assign to that particular virus strain, and then the year that that particular virus was found. So for this year, in the Northern Hemisphere, what the seasonal influenza vaccine consisted of was A Brisbane 59 2007, an H1N1-like virus, A Brisbane 10 2007, an H3N2-like virus, and B Brisbane 60 2008, which is a B virus. So how does this all work when you get the seasonal flu shot? What happens is when you get the seasonal flu shot, your body creates antibodies. When your antibody level is at such a level, when it gets to a tighter, the H has a shape at the tip of it. The H are the hemagglutinin. And what that shape does, when you get the vaccine, what your body does is creates antibodies to it. It creates the inverse of the shape at the tip of that vaccine. So if you picture in your mind the tip of the H that looks like, a triangle with a circle or half a moon and another triangle, what the antibodies that are produced are the opposite of that. So if your body if you contract an influenza virus and you've already had the seasonal flu shot for that particular virus, what happens is the antibodies cap off that H. And as we talked about earlier, the H is the key that unlocks the cell. So the key that unlocks the cell, it won't be able to actually unlock the cell because that shape and the sticky part of it is capped off by the antibodies that were created by that vaccine. So when people ask you, why would I have to get an H1 or the 2009 H1N1 shot when I've already got the seasonal flu shot? Well, now you can tell them because the antibodies that were created don't match up with that particular virus, and it will be ineffective. The 2009 H1N1, what virus is that? The one that you're getting, if you've forgotten the 2009 H1N1 shot, is A California 7 2009. That's the name of that particular virus. So how do they create the?
Sorry, Annalise. So that what you're saying is, even though there's a H1N1 that was in the 1918 and a H1N1 that's today, they have the same sort of identifiers, but they can be different strains based on the classification.
That's correct. That is correct. So how is the vaccine produced? Well, like I talked about, the vaccine is actually 8 segmented, RNA strands. And you actually inoculate a fertilized chicken egg. The vaccine manufacturers take the flu strain, the one that you want, and then they take another flu strain. And what they do is they inoculate the fertilized chicken egg. When the genes from that flu strain multiply and mix with the genes from the other flu strain, remember that virus pops out? It pops out each time. What they do is researchers, they actually take all of those, all of the viruses that have budded out and been released, and they look for the specific strain, the virus itself, that actually contains the H and the A that you're looking for from flu strain 1, because we're trying to get flu strain 1, a vaccine for that, the antibodies for that. And what that new reassorted virus and 2 other viruses, they put it together, and that actually was what is in the seasonal flu shot.